Well, good afternoon, everybody. I think at a real high level, there are two useful things we can do in this dialogue. One of them is talk about the possible organizational improvements that can happen. I think that's probably pertinent to the innovators and maybe some of the investors. And I think the other one is there's sort of a, how does good external engagement look compared to not so good external engagement, and like what's possible? So I feel like then that might be useful to some of the providers in the audience as well. So I feel like we can probably talk on both of those channels somewhat.
Yeah, I think so. And hi, everyone. That sounds good, Ed. I think obviously this isn't deeply rehearsed, but I think the full scope of these topics are near and dear to our hearts, and we're excited to share some stories with you. And as we go, should we kind of entertain questions as they come to, or do you want to kind of keep it conversational?
I think we can keep it a little conversational. I think, yeah, and we'll try and leave maybe 10-ish minutes. We've never had a meeting that went more than 28 minutes, so I feel like we're probably
I think that's probably true. We're both fast talkers, so I think we'll probably get through a lot.
So maybe I'm thinking we start with what your need was when we met. Is probably a good place to start.
Sure, I can do that. And again, so I'm Todd. I'm the president and CEO of RefleXion Medical. And the company has been around since 2009. But in many ways, it was kind of two guys, the classic two guys in a laptop story for the first 5 years. Raised its first institutional capital in 2014 with Sofinnova and Venrock, as well as Pfizer, and then has had rounds kind of ever since then. Raised a little over $650 million, and we just to set a little bit of context, right, for the kind of the history of the company. Started treating our first patients with our novel form of therapy, which very quickly, this isn't about reflection per se, so I'll keep this very quick, but which is a form of radiation therapy that uses injectable radiopharmaceuticals, PET tracers, and as you probably appreciate how PET tracers work, they target and collect, in our case, cancer, and then we've built a machine that is uniquely and for the first time sensitive to those signals and can fire right back at the origin of those signals, which is, again, the cancer itself. In fact, that's where the name reflection comes from. We started those actual therapeutic treatments last year in August and have now done that throughout our installed base, and we're seeing really fun and compelling clinical results already with 50 publications, abstracts already accepted this year. So super exciting time for the company as we kind of roll through science into kind of early commercial and clinical rollout, right? And that's kind of the phase of the company. Like I think a lot of the companies you are all familiar with, and getting back to your question, Ed, when did we start engaging and talking? It was probably 2018, maybe right around then. I joined the company in 2017 as its CEO to sort of transition the company from a team of physicists into a company, right? So to take a technology and sort of start to turn it into something that can be produced at scale and to kind of do that. I've been in med tech for about 30 years and spent about a third of that as a software engineer, and then kind of moved into different kinds of management and stuff like that. But it was clear when I joined the company, there were about 50 of us, and we were well capitalized and have continued to be well capitalized. We were growing fast. We're a big, expensive med tech. We have a 50,000 square foot factory that can make 125 of these big and heavy and expensive machines per year. The machines kind of look like something you would shoot into space, so it's kind of the typical big capital kind of story. And so we were growing fast, hiring a lot of people, all different types of people, not just the physicists and engineers. And it was very clear to us during that phase of growth, or that was kind of the first knee of inflection in our growth, right? As we sort of transitioned to this phase, it was clear that if we did not embrace proactively, deliberately, a management methodology, and by that I don't mean a program or project management methodology, I mean a decision-making methodology, a strategy and management of the tactics to support a strategy, and an early warning system related to all that, so you can make course corrections quickly, because as we all know, you have to. It was clear that through that rapid growth of personnel, that if we didn't proactively design a system, build a system, and implement it, that system was going to grow organically with or without us, and it would be a hodgepodge of half a dozen methodologies through well-intending people that would join the company, and it would just be sort of chaotic. That was the situation we were in, and I'll tell you a little bit more about how we came to know you and what that changed. But that was the landscape at the time that you and I started talking.
Yeah, that was the starting point. And so for me, kind of my background and context, I was an engineer. I started my career, I was a mechanical engineer, but I started my career at Intel back when there was no such thing as an Intel computer engineer, so they just hired any engineer that could fog a mirror, and then they showed us when we got there how to do it. So I was that for 10 years, and while I was there, I got kind of entrenched in their methodology. That was back when they were among a small number of companies that were running a 10-year product roadmap with 18-month product releases, each of which was to release into a market that did not exist yet and wasn't clear that it would ever exist. So they needed to just be super agile and adaptable, even though they were this giant company. And so I sort of grew up in that. Then I left and went into consulting and ended up forming a relationship with someone who became a mentor of mine. I started working on culture stuff. He had been working on kind of the sociological elements of what goes on in high-performing management, going back to like old school behavioral research from the 60s of guys with clipboards following managers around and saying, is there something management does that makes things better, or does it not matter? And there are some answers to that. And so that all came together for me. And so I've been doing this embodiment of this kind of work for around 10 years now, which is to answer the question of how do we need to run so that when we get bigger, we get faster. Some of you have met with me this week, I've said this already to you, but if I take your computer and I put a new processor in it, and I give it back to you, and I say to you, it's now run by a larger, more complex system, so it'll be slower, get used to it. You would fire me as your IT person, right? But that is a lot of what comes out of the org development and HR space around what you should do is if you're a leader, you better start slowing down a little and kind of thread this needle between you got to go slow to be accountable, but you got to go fast to stay alive. And it's kind of unfair because it tips at about 25 to 50 people, and you better still be fast when you're that small. So that's my background. So I came into it, and here they are looking for a methodology, and I've been working on this, like what happens when, what do we have to do to make the company run that way?
That's right. And when I first started to get to know Ed, and I think we were introduced by a really sharp project manager that works for us, and he was at KLA Tencor.
Right, we had worked together there.
Obviously a very big, sophisticated company that is very robust in its project management, and I think you worked with that individual to stand up some of this
we had done some work
management
like that
methodology there,
right.
and it as when I came to RefleXion at that time, I'd been part of small startups that grew into kind of big companies, and I'd been I'd run large teams all around the world, and over those years, probably like a lot of you, I had the experience of kind of coming into a company and then being responsible for a change management journey where you might have had a company that had grown through maybe a dozen, maybe 20 acquisitions all around the world. So you not only have geography and language to contend with, you have wildly different, cultures and wildly different philosophies about what management even means, what decision-making even means, what consensus means or doesn't mean, and how much is that important. And having to come in, and I was responsible for a change management journey in one of those, and it was not a lot of fun. It was really brutal, and I wanted to get as far ahead of that pain with this company as I could. And it was like and so I'm kind of going to a bunch of physicists and engineers, super smart people at RefleXion, the best team I've ever had the honor of working with. And I'm saying, look, we're going to implement a management methodology. And they're like, why? I mean, why would you do that? But you couldn't pry it out of the company now. If you had to pry it out of the company, you couldn't, because people realized the efficiency of it and the inherent effectiveness of having a common lexicon, a common set of dashboards that everybody understands, and we can, and I'm probably jumping ahead, right? But that's what we do. That's how all of our conversations tend to go. But we can move people between teams completely different. A marketing person can jump over into a science deep team, an advanced development team can pull back and deal with a support team that's dealing with the current release in the field. And they all have a common lexicon. They all have a common method for establishing and tracking progress towards goals. They all have a common tool set for escalating things when early warning signs go off, and they're gonna go off because there's a methodology to ensure they go off. We all have this kind of common toolkit about how to stand up task forces and working groups, and they live and then they're reported upon and then they die and we move on. And it's turned out to be really slick.
It's really stuck well. Yeah.
It's stuck. Yeah. Absolutely. To the point where, in fact, Ed's got a book. Maybe you've seen it, and Ed talks about it, his company, and he's good at all this stuff, as I'm sure you're going to pick up on. But we took it and made it our own. So we don't call it Iterate now, which is the title of your book. And in fact, when people say it, I kind of kind of smack them on it a little bit, because we now call it the reflection management methodology, right? Because we've taken the basic tenets of it, rolled it into our own framework, and that's just what we onboard people with now. When they start, they get that as part of the onboarding process. We train that. We do on-site trainings. You've trained us so that we train ourselves on that now. So you've kind of shifted from sort of a foreground role for a couple of years to a background role and back away, right?
That's the goal. Yeah.
And that is your goal. And it has been your goal from the beginning.
I'm supposed to get out. And that's, engineers work themselves out of jobs and consultants work themselves into jobs. And I'm an engineer first. And that's, I think, one of the unique things is that I
think that's true. I think that's true. And that resonated with me too. With my background being in physics and engineering, I immediately got the way Ed talked. And we're a super sciencey engineer kind of driven, like at our core, right? These are really smart people. And I knew that if I came at them with sort of I hope I'm not going to offend anybody when I say McKinsey or anything, I'm so sorry. But, like I've been in those big companies too, and I've rolled out those multi-million-dollar change management journeys driven by that kind of thing. And so I get that totally. But I knew that if I came with anything that even smelled like that, it just wasn't going to fly.
Right.
But you came in and said, this is the beginning, and pretty quick, if this goes well, you're not going to see me anymore. And it was like, I thought that was pretty cool. And I think it's proven to earn the trust of the organization to kind of take those first leaps, and then it's the progress that kind of pays for the next leaps, right? People just kind of get it. Like I said, I don't think we could pull it out of there now if we tried to, not that we would.
Right. No, and I think that's maybe this is both of those conversations, what's possible in this kind of work and what's possible in general. But, I think the HR/HR thought leader universe has a machine where publishers go to conferences and listen for buzzwords, not knowing what they mean, and then get people to write books about those buzzwords and then push it back out there. And so it's an echo chamber in a lot of ways. I don't mean to say there are not good HR and OD thought leaders out there. I mean to say there are many more of them than there are good ones. And so that has led to a sort of an overall ethos of like posters. So I'm supposed to leave my poster on Todd's wall with my footnote of Ed Muzio, iterate with little r. And that is actually antithetical to real system change, because the system, I have taken to doing my personal career development by hanging out with people to understand how brains work, because organizational systems are a lot more like the complex neurological network of the brain than they are like the org chart we use in HR, right? So if we're gonna make a system change, we have to get past the equivalent of the immune system. And one really good way to activate the immune system is to put a sign on it that says, this didn't come from here, right? This is from outside. And then I come in, you pay me, and I leave, and my poster stays, but that's all that stays, right? So we were real intentional and always are about,
very intentional to like, not
this is
do
yours.
That, right?
This is yours. Take it in your language and do it.
Yeah, and it's been fun. I think Ed obviously has a style that I think resonates with me. I mean, Ed's a nerd, and I mean that in the most complimentary way. And our company is a bunch of nerds, right? And myself included. And we get it. We kind of spoke a common language, and it was just a no-nonsense approach to make people more efficient so that they can focus their time and energy on the stuff they love to do, where the management sort of is automatic. And I've been really just obviously I was pleased, right? I wouldn't be here supporting Ed in having a conversation with you about this unless I was. And it's funny because when we first started talking about this panel, and we talked to Scott about doing this and things like that, it was a little like, I think we both sort of asked ourselves a question, well, is there an audience here that will be interested in this? Or, we were like, until 5 minutes ago, we were like, is anybody even going to come? Right? I was like, is anybody going to come? But what we told ourselves, and hopefully it's true, I'm not trying to speak for anybody, maybe there was just no other place to sit down or something. But you should care about it. I just don't know how else to say it, right? But you should care about this stuff. Whether you're running a company, I know you care about it. But as an investor, you should care about it too, right? Because obviously the one thing we all learn in working with investors is that you invest in people, right? You invest in teams. And this methodology is like the grease between the gears of a team, right? And it pulls teams together. It makes them more efficient. It reduces the grind of those gears. And, as an investor, you should want that. And but don't raise your price, right?
Well,
Because
no,
it's still,
good. It's just
I think as an investor, we want it to remain cost effective too. And you are cost effective, especially when you compare it to some of those other things out there where you leave the poster behind, right?
Well, yeah, one of the things that I think is probably worth mentioning here, just sort of what I'm actually putting in place, because it's really fairly simple. And this is where the engineer goes in me goes, I say I can do this in a quarter. Another bigger name firm will say it'll take 2 years and $10 million. And I go, I don't understand what you're doing for those 2 years, because we're just making a system change. All we're really doing at a fundamental level is usually 25 to 50 people, and I work with that size up to multinationals. You tip from, we all get into a room and look where we're going and do it, to we now have layers, and Todd's my boss's boss. So I'm going to make a status update to my boss that looks good for Todd, because either my boss is a little worried or I'm a little worried or something. And so all of a sudden, Todd finds himself sitting in a staff meeting with a series of 9-minute status updates. And so it becomes his job to look down at these updates and go, I think that one's telling the truth. I think that it's my job to put them together. Where what we really want is not something theatrical like that. And so the change we make is to go, no, what's going to happen in that meeting is they're all going to come in and they're going to go, look, we're going here together as a group. And right now, my piece says we're going to end up here, and that's a difference. So I want to put this on the table right now. I think we should do this, this, and this to bring those two things together. And so that takes about 3 minutes instead of 9. And so I'm going to make a decision about that, and we implement it. And so that decision breaks something else, or something else breaks on its own, and next week we make a new decision. So we're putting more decisions in, more frequent cycles, and you can speak to how that looked in your staff, but that's the general thing we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, and thanks for that reminder, because it's funny, because we've been doing this now for a few years, right?
Right,
and,
we're behind you for all, yeah.
And it's interesting that you reminded me of a feeling that my team and I had when we started rolling this out, and it was immediate. And like a lot of startups, we all know it's hard, right? It's incredibly hard. It's super stressful, and there's always something, right? And what teams tend to do, in my experience, of every startup I've been a part of, and I'm sure this is common among you as well, is it's easy to fall into a trap of a lot of storytelling, right? Because it's like, hey, look at this incredible thing that I overcame over the last month, and you spend a lot of time storytelling. And those stories are important because they bring a team together, and it's part of the fabric of self-support that I think we all appreciate is necessary in a startup trying to do something new and important and difficult. But if you don't tilt the equation so that it's maybe 10% storytelling, 90% forward-looking, you're not seeing around corners you need to see, and then you're going to react to things that you should be avoiding to some degree, right? You'll never avoid everything, but you get the idea. And I think we had started to fall into that trap, and we immediately noticed through the discipline of a relatively simple and straightforward methodology that we flipped that. And the storytelling went down. In fact, it went so far down, I'll tell you what we did about it in a minute. It went so far down that we spent all of our time forward-looking, but we immediately were talking about the right things that were potentially months into the future, and we were doing that in a very consistent manner across a team, all staring at a single kind of guiding point on the horizon in terms of goals, right? And I don't just mean one goal like, address late-stage cancer that we're working on, but the detailed goals for that year to enable that, right? And in fact, we got so good at not storytelling that we had to add a section to our formal agenda called cafe time. And
just
it's
to do a little
to do a little bit. So at the end of every agenda, there's a cafe slot, and it's just sort of like, hey, you're hanging out with colleagues at a coffee shop, having an espresso or whatever, and it's an opportunity to share stories, right? That's, in fact, you shouldn't be bringing up something that you should be bringing up in the bulk of the weekly meeting. And it's turned out to be great. So people kind of separate that, and they kind of know. So it's not like we carved it out so much that people felt like they didn't have the opportunity for that story time, but there's the storytelling and the socialization of those events happen in a dedicated slot, which is proportionally appropriate versus the bulk of the management methodology.
Do you remember, Todd? I don't know if you remember this or not, but like when I come in, first I observe some meetings, and then we do a big touch point. It's like an on-site, off-site, except when you get back, instead of being 3 days behind, you're 3 weeks ahead, because we actually do the work of the company for a few days with 3 layers. So Todd, his people, their people. But I watched a couple meetings, your staff meeting, and it was all intelligent, good stuff around stuff that was coming up in the next, I'd say, 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 8 to 10 weeks. And then we did that process, and the first staff meeting after, one of your people came in and went, in 18 months, we're going to do these installs. And if we don't solve this now, it's not going to work. And you and I looked at each other and went, there it is.
That's
that was
great,
it.
right there. Yeah, and it was just really cool, right?
Yeah, and ever since then, I think it was there.
I think so too. That sort of solidified it, right? And we got it.
Yeah, so it seems sort of strange, and part of the reason I'm so appreciative of Todd for doing this is normally my clients come in through referrals because I say I'll come in and fix this in 3 months, and big name firm says 2 years and how many $1 million, and I seem like a crazy person. Except then I come in and fix it in 3 months. So Todd calls his friend, I go over there. That's how it usually works. So, and it's only because it's not, as he said, it's not that complicated. The trick is to shift the behavior as collective habits. And I think that's a good thing to talk about a little bit, is how the habits of your people changed.
Yeah.
And from that view.
Yeah, it is that collective habit is totally, right? I mean, now it's, there's part of this process is kind of a formal process for creating, updating, and deploying goals across the entire company, which, it's more than an all hands to say this is what we're doing, right? I mean, it's sort of it's through the methodology that these things are memorialized and artifacts are created that can be tracked in every single team meeting. And like if I am behind on something like that because I'm out raising capital or any other things that we do, I mean, I have people nagging me for the artifacts of this methodology, like right away. And that tells you something too, right? I mean, people won't let this stuff go. They are counting on it. When we establish task force and working groups, we all know what a task force and a working group is, but there's a specific methodology for that and a behavior, and people just expect it. And then we report on it, and people know what that means. They understand the difference. There's a decision-making timeline that, there's all kind of just sort of very pragmatic things.
Well, let me pause that for a second.
Understand.
Because actually, I think that the task force and working group, you guys have that language now.
We do.
But that's actually turns out to be a really important thing, right? So if you're doing this right, we're in Todd's staff, and there's a decision to make, and we have to get you go figure this out. And so if this is working in Todd's staff, Todd goes, you take 2 weeks, go come back with a recommendation. We're putting you on the agenda in 2 weeks, and that's called a task force, which is your only job is recommendation, come back. And it's boring, and you do it all the time. And now Todd goes, we know what that is. But in the absence of that language and structure, one of those people has to figure out on their own there's an issue, figure out who else to talk to, get them to come to a meeting. And so we are tasking people with inventing management and leadership on top of their job of doing it. And it's hard enough to do it, right? So once you get that in place, it's boring. We stand it up, we tear it down, and it just goes on.
That's right. And I think it's important to remind ourselves, and we sort of struggled with this too. It's like, oh, well, no, like among our physics team, we like to look at challenges and solve challenges in this way. And in our marketing organization, we want to do it that way. And our service team does it this way. And that was just terribly inefficient, right? I mean, getting to a point where we formalized, even if it was kind of a light touch formality, but to have a lexicon and approach and sort of a template to use cross-functionally has allowed the service person to be on the physics team and draft it in, and the physics person to go draft into a service team and just not be caught off guard, like, wait, what are we doing? It's just like people get it and they can flow. We've found our ability to have teams be more fungible in a cross-functional setting because of this. It's enabled project management to have a better footing in this and to integrate with that because they can reach across as well. I just haven't seen a downside, and I'm really glad we did it. It's been a super productive journey, and it's now part of the fabric of what we do.
Yeah, and I think that the higher level, I think the other conversation we're having about what can be good about an external engagement is even in a whole different space. I think part of what we're trying to do with what I'm doing is to say it is very light, right? So in my multinational clients, there could be templates that are pages long. The template Todd's talking about is 4 letters. Literally, make sure you cover these 4 things and do it in less than 3 minutes. So we didn't
on a single page.
Yeah, on a single page, right? And so we didn't say like your marketing department likes Asana and the other people like that thing. No. That's fine. Keep what you're doing
for sure.
Which in bigger companies they kind of get heavy with it, but being able to stay light is important, I think.
I think it's definitely important to be able to stay light. I agree.
So I think we're close to the Q&A part. I guess I want to ask you before we do that. Sure. From the lens of kind of behaviors, and you're kind of in a sense you're remote from a lot of what goes on at the next level down. But do you see what do you see as systematic behaviors now that are almost like unquestioned, but you can look back to before we did it and say those weren't like that?
I feel like we're much better at looking around corners. Like I feel like because of this methodology and there's just the mindset of spending, kind of 90% of our team engagement looking for ways we won't achieve a goal, whether it's a high goal, a low goal that feeds into a high goal. We understand the linkage between goals. Every team has to quantify their goals. There's terminology for it I won't get into that's part of the methodology, but and then associate them to the higher level goals. So every single thing in the company that everybody works on, no matter what function, can be directly tied back to one or more corporate goals that are maintained. And if there's any reason to believe we aren't going to achieve one of the things down here, it, because of the methodology, will ripple all the way up. And people like to do that. Like we sort of measure whether or not we're being honest with ourselves based on the number of these sort of one-page things that are these early warning signs, how often they come up. And they come up a lot. I think the early warning system is in place, right? It doesn't keep things from going wrong, but I feel like we're reacting to what's wrong faster than I have seen in other companies that did not have a consistent methodology across all functions, right?
And I think that one thing I want to say about that, the methodology pieces, and this is pretty important. I think I don't know if I should name the one of the other bodies of work around goal setting, but I will because it's really good. There's a body of work called OKRs. Maybe you've read the book. It's really very good. It comes from the same initial research and information that the iterate content comes from. And that book is literally like my chapter 3, I think. So it is very consistent with what I'm doing. The benefit of that book is it gets much deeper into how to do that part of it well. The downside of that book is there is a way to read it that makes it sound like as long as you get the goals right, everything else falls into place. And that's not actually true. And I've seen time and again, and this is especially true in the larger organizations or people that have come out of larger organizations, and you weren't doing this, but some of these guys in your seat will do this, where it's like, we came from one of the fewer high-functioning large organizations, and now I'm going to do it here. And what's most visible is linked goals like OKRs, and the second thing that's most visible is regular meetings. And so I've seen multiple times executives come out, I don't understand. I put linked goals and regular meetings in place, and it got more bureaucratic. Those two things by themselves add bureaucracy, and they add, I think, about a 15 to 18% tax on the organization if you just do that. If you do the thing Todd's talking about, which is the early warning system and the decision-making and the cycling of raising issues so that you're taking bite by bite out of the work, that's iterate, right? That's the piece that makes it work.
Right, and I just think there's just certain cultural things. Like the thing that I liked about this, and again, kind of refreshing my memory of some of the decision process that I went through when we took this on. As at the end of the day, this is a change management journey, right? And we've all done change management projects. And there are great ways to do those and terrible ways to do those. And we've probably all lived through those examples. The thing that I really liked about this approach, and I found it common among every good change management journey I've been a part of, is that it was relatively simple, right? It was straightforward. It was not tool-based, like where you get a tool and it's a software thing and you have to do it, and every time I have a thought or a decision, I have to document in a tool that's awkward and hard to use, and then everybody's got to learn the tool. It just wasn't. These are like one-page Word document artifacts, right? That are just simple. Because it was like change management process that started with a cultural impact, supported by simple kind of process improvements and methodologies and kind of a lexicon of vocabulary. Versus like, oh, here's the Ed software tool, and y'all got to use that. We need an annual subscription, and all. It was none of that. And so I felt like because it led with culture, it has been supportive of our culture and amplifying of our culture. And what I tell every employee that has ever worked at RefleXion, I literally mean it, and you could ask anybody that's there, I want this to be the best job they've ever had. No matter what happens, I want it to be the best job they've ever had, for the outcome of our patients, for the outcome of our clinical partners, and for the outcome of their career and the advancement of their own career. And that's super important to me. It's super important to my team. And part of that, I think the biggest part of that is they would tell you, I think, if you ask them, that they believe that RefleXion is among the most transparent companies they've ever worked for. And that's my goal, because I was part of great and magical startups where everybody knew everything and we were all in it together, and it was the kind of classic Silicon Valley thing. And I've been parts of big bureaucratic organizations too, and I knew I just hated that and did not want to. I wanted to do everything I could to go in the opposite direction of that. And so we hit this hard from that cultural perspective through the lens of transparency. And I think because this is a simple and easy to implement tool based on common sense that appeals to people in that manner, it's amplified our transparency. And I think that's probably why people like it, right? They kind of know what we're doing. They know why we're doing it. They know what the risks are. They know how we're managing the risk because there's a common set of things that we all share and publicize. And you know what I mean? It's just part of what we do. And I think that's, at the end of the day, I mean, what more could I want from how a management team reacts and interacts with each other?
Well, and as hard as it sounds on the front end to say we're going to build a culture where people bring issues early, and everyone goes, I don't want to bring issues early. Everything's fine in my area. Look over there. On the flip side of it, that creates the transparency that people love and the retention they love, because it's like, oh, when I have a problem, there's a whole bunch of peers waiting for me to bring it to them to help me as early as I can, and they say thank you when I bring it because they want to solve it sooner, and that's a big flip of what's normally there. The other thing, by the way, on those of your service providers, what makes a good engagement? When the guy who hires you says, "I'd like this to be one of your best ever engagements too," which Todd said to me when he hired me, that's a good sign. So that was cool. Yeah,
I think it matters.
Yeah, no, and I am lucky in that usually my CEO clients self-select out if they're trying to run dictatorships or if they're overly obsessed with their own power, because they hear me talking and go, I don't want to do that. But Todd was definitely all the way in the other direction of like someone who's saying like, I see the importance of this and I want to make sure we do this right, and it's worth a little bit of investment once to get it right versus trying to hack our way through it and get it wrong a few times. And I think that's a good choice.
Yeah, and especially, and I don't want to take any excess credit for that, right? I mean, I think it's because it's just immediately identifiable to the people that are going through the change, like basic tenet of change management, right? Celebrate wins early, right? And get so that you can kind of go, wow, this is worth doing. Some change management journeys, you got to wait a long time before you see some wins, right? And so you're kind of hoping that you have enough momentum to sort of push through the first, kind of break the first wall of ice. But we started seeing wins right away, cultural wins, transparency wins. And I think that has created a momentum that the company has continued to build around.
And it has, and it's fun for me. We got into COVID a little bit, and so I ended up staying around a little differently with RefleXion than I would otherwise. But which is really cool for me is I got to really see in real life something happen in the executive team, and then the next level down copied it, not because anyone told them to, just because it made sense. And the next level down, it was like, oh, they're all doing it. Like I got to see the theory of like culture replication go down. Which by the way, if you are an innovator and you're running a team of any size, run your team as clean as you can, because they are all bad photocopies on the way down, right? It only gets worse. So do your best at the top to be clean, because they will do it well if you do it well. But if you do it but not clearly, it just gets fuzzier.
So that's all I got. I don't know if you have anything else, but I mean, I know we're getting close on time, but this is probably a different kind of panel than you've come to at LSI. It's a different kind of panel than I've been on at LSI. Hey, Rob. I hope you found it interesting, and so I for one want to thank you for your time.
Yeah, I thank you also for your time, and thank you, Todd, for doing this. This has been a fun experience this way too. We have a few minutes left. If anyone wants to ask questions, we can, I think, do that a bit, right? And then,
please.
Yeah. We'll go across. They'll start. Yeah, there. Oh, good. There you go. Okay.
Oh, can you hear me? Is there a meta process, which is to say, like every amount of time or every incident or whatever, we pause and we think, is this decision framework working? Do we need to change anything about it? Or, right, is there any of that built into the framework?
I mean, I'll answer my interpretation of that. You will too, I'm sure. Yes, is the short answer, and it's continuous. The book is called Iterate, and it's based on, and the methodology that we have adopted is based on continuous iterations with then current information. So whenever new information comes up, whether it's a lack of progress, a challenge, something that needs to be fixed or corrected or influenced, otherwise you won't achieve that goal, that's when it comes up. So it's sort of not like, okay, see you next quarter or even see you next month. It's whenever it needs to come up. Is that how you interpret it?
I think that's right. I think, the thing I would say from my perspective is I always say I only know two things: what has to happen and how to get it to happen. So if you read the book and do it, that's all you need. Except you're right. The one thing I didn't put in the book that I will put in the next edition is there should be a debrief process every so often to just check how it's going. And so we always make sure.
And if that's what you're referring to, sort of the broader process, health check on the process, we do that too. And so there is an opportunity, and fortunately, my team has no trouble raising objections, and so that comes up a lot too. Yeah.
And can I ask a quick follow-up? Is there some memorialization of the decisions and some annotation of how you arrived at that decision, and is that somewhere so it's institutionalized somehow?
The decisions within the meetings,
or the major decisions that would change, or something about how.
Yes, we do that too. So that's part of it.
And is that just the one-pagers, or do you have like a separate log?
We have an ongoing set of very quick minutes, especially around decisions, task force, working group, input, output, so that all that's memorialized. So if we go back 6 months later, we've all been there, right? And you're like, why did we pick that again? We can go back.
There's some very block and tackle stuff built in here, as well as some high-level stuff. I want to answer a question you didn't ask that's very related, though, because I think it's super cool. One thing these guys did, which now I recommend is the best method if the company is into it, is when we got done, you created a little brochure, and it said who we are matters, and it was mission, vision, values. And then the next page it said how we work matters, and it was reflection management methodology. So that's also memorialized, and they did it in a way of like when someone comes in, like here's the culture, and it's very clean and very clear and very short, so that everyone coming in the door understands why and what and why. Yeah, there's one over there, I think.
I was just curious how you're triaging these early warnings as they come in.
Every team does this, but I'll speak to my team. So we have our weekly stand-ups every Tuesday. We deliberately do them on Tuesdays so that the team is in the office on Monday and might pick up something that it wouldn't otherwise pick up. And then by Friday evening, they have to have submitted everything that they would like to raise in the Tuesday meeting, including any issues that I'll look at, and I decide. One of the parts of the methodology is what are my deliberate active decisions versus what sometimes the team is trying to influence me to make a decision, and it needs to be clear that I'm the decider. I'm on the hook for that, right? And so that's one. It's a kind of administrative example, but I decide what's going to be on the agenda or not, because I might delay something because I want some additional information to come in or anything like that. So there is a triaging opportunity. But it works out pretty quickly. It's been rare that I say we're going to delay that one a week or a few days based on some new information that they may not be aware of or something like that. Those are the exceptions, but we do have that opportunity too.
One of the things that I've seen that relates to that is, and I don't know how much this was the case with you guys, a little bit, I think. Sometimes it's more pronounced. Sometimes there's this effect of like, oh, it's staff, what are we going to talk about? And when we get it up and running the right way, it's like staff populates itself because your people put in a bunch of issues, you're picking the highest priority one, and oh, by the way, 3 weeks ago you had an issue and you put it on the agenda for today to come back with recommendations.
It's fast.
The system runs.
And so we're just like going around the table just like ding, 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 ding. It's really efficient. We still meet often, but we get through a lot fast and efficiently.
I had another client that they did the process, and at the end, the leader pointed at somebody and said, "You've been here the longest. What do you see as the difference?" And this was a virtual one because it was a worldwide group, and we do it virtually. And she goes, "I just watched a recording of one of our staff meetings 6 months ago," and she goes, "We weren't doing very much." And then, like in real time, she goes, "Wait, Ed, you knew?" And I was like, "Well, you're getting more done now," and that's there was potential there, right? But it really is it's hard to describe the level of like how much more happens per cycle.
But it's real. Yeah.
Thanks so much. One of the things I'm struggling to understand is how do you get people out of that startup, firefighting phase? I feel like you're always looking at the thing that's right in front of you that needs to get done, and really get them to think about, well, what matters in 18 months that I have to address today?
I don't think you push them to 18 months so much as you give them a way to raise the issues. That's part of what that accelerator is like, you have to get those cleared. You can't say, don't worry about this, look out there. You have to go, we're going to start to clear issues faster, and then they move out themselves, I think.
Yeah, I think there's a push and a pull, and they both happen, right? The pull is that, look, we're going to shift from storytelling 80% of the time to storytelling 10% of the time, and everything else has got to be forward-looking, which by definition means we have to have goals, which by definition means we have to talk about the tactics to support those goals, right? And so then there's a strategy session to produce the goals in the first place. And so, you sort of inherently, the pull is that the team are forced to think about the future more. Now, the future might be a week, a month, a day, 6 months, whatever, right? So it kind of depends on the function and where the company is, obviously. But the push is that, at least in my case, like, the reason I was talking about wanting to do this was because I saw that if we didn't, there was going to be a problem, right? And we already started to feel pockets of it. And the way, you know how it goes, right? Teams express their present frustration, not to say like, hey, we don't have, company-wide goals, or they don't say that. They say, we don't feel aligned cross-functionally. It's that kind of thing, right? And so sufficient pain gathers in the organization to the point where it is motivated for change. And that's the pain you tap into, so that they're pushing, and then the pull is the goal setting and the tactics. And I think it's both. And so if you can emphasize that pain, and you have the company's trust, and I'm sure you do, you have the opportunity to kind of try something, right? And as long as you get the early wins, quick buy-in, it starts to build a virtuous bit of momentum behind it. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So we're hitting the time wall here. Todd, thank you so much for doing this with me. I'm going to sign
appreciate
books at my table over by registration. I also hid 10 books under the table, so if you don't have one yet, I might have one for you. But Todd, thank you so much. This has been fun, and
this is fun.
glad to
Thanks
chat
again.
with you. Yeah. Thank you.